Hey, Grace, I'm so excited to see you. I've been reading that book you suggested to me last month, and I wanted to tell you about it. I think it's called The Midnight Library.
Yes, that's right. The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I'm so glad you picked it up. What do you think of it so far?
I really like it. It's about a woman who finds a special library between life and death, right? But I'm having trouble explaining why I enjoy it. How do I say when a book makes me want to keep reading?
When a book makes you want to continue reading, we call it a page turner. It means the story is so engaging that you just want to keep turning the pages to find out what happens next.
Yes, exactly. It's definitely a page turner. I stayed up until midnight yesterday because I couldn't. How do you say it? I couldn't stop reading it.
We have a perfect expression for that. When a book is so good that you can't stop reading, we say you couldn't put it down. For example, the book was so good, I couldn't put it down until I finished it.
That's perfect. I couldn't put it down. The main character, Nora, makes me feel connected to her problems. Is there a word for that?
Yes, we would say the character is relatable. When you feel connected to a character or understand their feelings and problems, that character is relatable. It's one of the qualities that makes a book really engaging.
Relatable. That's the word I was looking for. Nora is very relatable to me. I also like what do you call the idea behind the story, the big message?
The big idea or message behind a story is called the theme. A book can have multiple themes like love, redemption, or finding your purpose in life. The Midnight Library explores themes of regret, second chances, and appreciating the life you have.
Themes, yes. I think the themes in this book are making me think about my own life choices. What's the word for when a book makes you think deeply?
When a book makes you think deeply, we call it thought-provoking. You might also say it's profound or insightful. These are great compliments for a book.
The Midnight Library is definitely thought-provoking, but there are some parts where I don't understand all the words. What's a good way to handle that when reading in English?
That's a common challenge when reading in a second language. You have several options. You can use a dictionary to look up unknown words, or if there are just a few unfamiliar words that don't seem essential to understanding the story, you can practice what we call reading for context, using the surrounding text to guess the meaning.
I try to read for context, but sometimes I feel like I'm missing important details. Should I look up every word I don't know?
Not necessarily. Looking up every unfamiliar word can disrupt the flow of your reading. Flow meaning the smooth, uninterrupted experience of being immersed in a book. Many experienced readers only look up words that appear multiple times or seem crucial to understanding the plot.
That's helpful advice. I'll try to focus more on the flow. What about when the author uses not the real meaning of words, like when they say, her heart was a stone?
That's called figurative language, or more specifically, a metaphor, comparing one thing to another without using like or as. Authors use metaphors, similes, and other figurative language to create vivid images and emotions. It can be challenging for language learners because the meaning isn't literal.
Metaphors, yes. The book has many metaphors. I think the library itself is a big metaphor.
Absolutely, we might call that an extended metaphor or a central metaphor, since it runs throughout the entire book. The library represents all the possible lives Nora could have lived if she had made different choices. It's a powerful way to explore the theme of life choices and regret.
I understand now. What's the right way to describe what kind of book this is? It's not exactly real life, but it's not complete fantasy either. Even
The Midnight Library would be considered speculative fiction, which includes elements that don't exist in our reality but aren't purely fantastical either. Some might also call it magical realism, a style where realistic settings include magical or impossible elements that are treated as normal.
speculative fiction, I'll remember that. Thank you for recommending this book. How do you find such good books to read? Do you have a special method?
I use several methods to discover good books. I read reviews in newspapers and literary magazines, follow some book bloggers whose tastes align with mine, and I'm part of a book club where we share recommendations. I also pay attention to award winners and books that generate buzz, meaning a lot of excitement and discussion.
I'd like to join a book club someday, but I'm nervous about discussing books in English. What are some simple phrases I could use to start sharing my opinions?
That's a great question. You can start with straightforward phrases like, I enjoyed this book because, or my favorite character was because, or the part that stood out to me was, you don't need complex literary terminology to share meaningful observations about a book.
Those phrases sound useful and not too difficult. After I finish The Midnight Library, can you recommend another book? Maybe something in the same type?
The word you're looking for is genre, which refers to the category or style of literature. If you enjoy The Midnight Library, you might also like A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman or Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Both have elements of poignancy and reflection on life, though in different ways.
Genre, yes, that's the word. I would like to read more books in this genre. I'll add those titles to my, what do you call the lists of books you want to read?
That's commonly called your to-be read list, or TBR for short. Readers often say things like, that's going on my TBR, or my TBR pile is getting too big. It refers to all the books you plan to read in the future.
My TBR list is definitely getting very long. I keep adding books faster than I can read them. Is there a word for people who buy more books than they can read?
Yes, there's actually a Japanese word that's been adopted into English, tsundoku. It refers to the habit of acquiring books and letting them pile up unread. Many book lovers jokingly admit to having this condition.
Sundoku, what a perfect word. I definitely have sundoku. My shelf is full of books I haven't started yet. Speaking of which, in The Midnight Library, there's a part where the main character meets a different version of herself. What do you call that idea of other possible lives?
That concept is often called parallel lives or alternate realities. In science fiction and philosophy, it's sometimes referred to as the multiverse theory, the idea that there are infinite versions of reality where different choices led to different outcomes.
Parallel lives? That makes sense. I find that idea very making me think.
You could say you find it fascinating, intriguing, or thought-provoking. All of these words describe something that captures your interest and makes you think deeply about it.
Yes, I find the concept of parallel lives fascinating. Do you ever wonder about your own parallel lives, Grace?
I do sometimes. It's a compelling thought experiment. In literature, this is called an existential question, a question about the nature and meaning of human existence. Books that explore existential questions often resonate deeply with readers because they address universal human curiosities.
Existential questions, I like that phrase. The Midnight Library definitely asks existential questions. By the way, what do you call it when you guess what will happen next in a book?
That's called making a prediction or anticipating the plot. When readers try to figure out what will happen next, they're predicting the outcome. If a book is very surprising and goes in unexpected directions, we might call it unpredictable, or say it has plot twists.
I'm not very good at predicting the outcome. This book has surprised me several times. What's a plot twist exactly?
A plot twist is a surprising change in the direction of the story that readers typically don't see coming. It's when the author deliberately misleads readers or introduces new information that changes how we understand everything that came before. Good plot twists make readers say, I didn't see that coming.
The Midnight Library definitely has some plot twists. I was surprised when... No, I won't tell you in case someone else wants to read it. What's the word for when you tell someone important parts of the story before they read it?
That's called a spoiler. When you reveal important plot points to someone who hasn't read or watched something yet, you're spoiling the experience for them. People often say no spoilers, please, when discussing books or movies they haven't experienced yet.
Yes, I don't want to give spoilers. When I'm excited about a book, sometimes I want to tell my friends everything about it, but I know I shouldn't give spoilers.
That's thoughtful of you. You can share your enthusiasm without spoilers by discussing the themes, the quality of the writing, or your emotional response to the book. For example, you might say, "The book made me reflect on my own choices," or "The writing style was beautiful," without revealing specific plot events.
Those are good suggestions. I'll try to remember them. Another thing I wanted to ask in English, is it a book that changed my life or a book which changed my life? I'm always confused about that and which.
Both are grammatically correct, but there's a subtle difference. That is used for essential information that defines what you're talking about, while which introduces additional, non-essential information. In casual conversation, many people use them interchangeably, but a book that changed my life is more common.
Thank you for explaining. English grammar can be confusing sometimes. Back to the Midnight Library. I think it might become a book that changes my life. Have you read other books by this same creator?
The creator of a book is called the author. Yes, I've read other books by Matt Haig. He's written several novels as well as nonfiction books about mental health. If you enjoy his writing style, meaning his particular way of using language, you might enjoy his other works too.
I definitely enjoy his writing style. It's, how do you say when something is easy to read?
When writing is easy to read, we might call it accessible, readable, or straightforward. If it flows naturally, we might say it has a smooth or fluid style. Matt Haig is known for his accessible writing style that tackles complex topics in an approachable way.
Yes, his writing is very accessible. That's why I'm able to read it in English, even though I'm still learning. What about the person who reads the book out loud for audio versions? What are they called?
That person is called a narrator. For audiobooks, publishers often hire professional narrators who might be actors or voice artists. A good narrator can greatly enhance the experience of an audiobook by bringing different characters to life with their voice.
I might try the audiobook for my next book to help with my pronunciation. One more question. What's the difference between a novel and a book? Are they the same?
That's a good question. A novel is specifically a long work of fiction, a made-up story. Book is a more general term that can refer to novels, but also to nonfiction works, collections of poetry, textbooks, and so on. So all novels are books, but not all books are novels.
I understand now. The Midnight Library is both a book and a novel. Thank you for clarifying that. Do you prefer physical books or books on devices?
Books on electronic devices are called e-books, and the devices themselves are often called e-readers. This is a common topic among readers. People who prefer physical books might call themselves traditional readers, or say they enjoy the tactile experience of paper books. Those who prefer e-books might cite convenience or portability as reasons.
I like both, but there's something special about holding a physical book. What's the word for the smell of books?
The distinctive smell of books, especially old ones, doesn't have an official single word in English, though book lovers often refer to it as book smell or the smell of books. Some might use more poetic descriptions, like the aroma of aged paper or the scent of stories. There's actually a scientific term for the smell of old books: bibliosmia.
Bibliosmia, what a beautiful word. I love bibliosmia. Grace, I'm really enjoying our conversation about books. It's helping me learn so many useful English words and phrases for talking about reading.
I'm glad you're finding it helpful, Lily. Talking about books is a wonderful way to expand your vocabulary and practice expressing opinions and emotions in English. The more you discuss books, the more comfortable you'll become with literary terms and expressions.
It's true. I feel more confident already. Maybe next time we can go to a place that sells books. I forgot the word.
That would be a bookstore or bookshop. And if we want to be more specific, there are independent bookstores, privately owned, chain bookstores, part of a larger company, and used bookstores selling secondhand books. We could also visit the library, which lends books rather than selling them.
Yes, a bookstore. I'd love to visit an independent bookstore with you. Maybe you can help me find my next book after I finish The Midnight Library.
I'd be happy to. Independent bookstores often have knowledgeable staff who can offer personalized recommendations. These suggestions are sometimes displayed as staff picks in the store. Browsing bookstores together is a great way to discover new reads and practice discussing books in English.
That sounds perfect. By the way, do all books belong to a specific category, like mystery or romance?
Yes, books are typically categorized by genre, though some books might cross multiple genres or be difficult to categorize. Common genres include mystery, romance, science fiction, fantasy, literary fiction, historical fiction, thriller, horror, and nonfiction categories like biography, history, or self-help. Bookstores and libraries use these genres to organize their collections.
I see. What genre would you say The Midnight Library belongs to? It has some magical elements, but feels very real life too.
The Midnight Library would likely be classified as speculative fiction or magical realism, as we mentioned earlier. It might also be found in literary fiction sections because it explores deep themes about life and human psychology. Some bookstores might place it in contemporary fiction with elements of fantasy. Books that blend genres like this are sometimes called genre-bending or hybrid works.
I like books that mix different genres. They're usually more interesting. What's the word for when you see yourself in a book character?
When you see aspects of yourself in a character or strongly identify with them, we say you relate to the character or find them relatable. You might also identify with a character. This connection is one of the most powerful aspects of reading, finding characters whose experiences or feelings mirror our own.
Yes, I relate to Nora in The Midnight Library a lot. Some of her regrets and doubts are similar to mine. Is there a word for when a book feels like it was written just for you?
When a book resonates with you so deeply that it feels personal, you might say it speaks to you or resonates with you. Some readers describe books that feel particularly meaningful as transformative, or say that the book touched them deeply. The phrase, "this book found me at the right time," is also commonly used for books that seem perfectly aligned with your current life situation.
The Midnight Library definitely speaks to me. I think that's why I couldn't put it down. One last question. What do you call a person who loves books?
A person who loves books is called a bibliophile or a book lover. Someone who reads a lot might be called an avid reader or a bookworm, though the latter is sometimes used more for people who read constantly, even in social situations. People who collect books might be called book collectors or rare book enthusiasts if they focus on valuable editions.
Then I am definitely a bibliophile, thanks to recommendations like yours. Thank you for suggesting The Midnight Library and for teaching me so many useful words today, Grace. I feel much more confident talking about books in English now.
You're very welcome, Lily. Your English is coming along wonderfully, and I've enjoyed our conversation. Remember, the best way to improve your book vocabulary is to keep reading and discussing what you read. I'm looking forward to hearing your final thoughts on The Midnight Library when you finish it.
I'll definitely share my thoughts when I finish. Maybe we can meet at the cafe inside the bookstore next week?
That sounds perfect. The cafe in a bookstore is sometimes called a book cafe or bookstore cafe. It's an ideal spot for literary discussions. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. I'm going to finish the book this weekend so I can tell you all about it, without spoilers for anyone listening to us, of course.
It's very considerate. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Happy reading, Lily.